Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 7 Degrees of Change project, the Charter School Marketplace, which is dedicated to elevating the industry and bringing players, both service providers and policymakers, to the table to give us an explanation of what they're doing and how they're helping the industry. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Attorney Stephen Walker, Esquire, who's I don't want to say an old friend, but a longtime good friend. We served on CSAB together. So I don't want to talk about you. I'd rather have you talk about yourself. So if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little bit of your personal background and personal history.
Yeah, so I grew up in western North Carolina in the Henderson County, and grew up basically with a farm across the way. And when I was growing up, there was no such thing as charter schools. I went to traditional public schools, and after that, when I was in high school, I met my high school sweetheart, who's now my wife of 25 years. We've got 5 kids together. Went from the public schools in Henderson County, went to Clemson University and studied there, and then went to Campbell's Law School and graduated from there back in 2005. Been practicing law ever since. Had a stint with the Lieutenant Governor's office, and while I was there, I was his designee to the Charter School Advisory Board. I served as the vice chair to that board, and that is where we met each other, and been just interested in charter schools ever since, and really trying to do what I can do to help the movement along so that more students can get quality education.
Well, I can remember the first time we met. You came to High Point, you visited the school, because you had no background in charter schools. And the other people that we were close with, Baker, Debbie, so on, and you came to visit the school. And I remember I reported back to him, I said, he's one of us.
Yeah.
He may not have a background in this, I said, but to see him walking through the school, he's one of us. He gets this industry. He loves what it means and what happens with the kids that are in the buildings and the whole thing. So it's like a sparkle in your eye. It's like he gets it. He's one of us. So tell us a bit more, if you would, about your current legal practice and where you are and what you're doing. And do you serve any charter schools currently, or a little bit more about your professional history?
Yeah. So I guess as far as professional history, my first job out of law school, I was a clerk for Supreme Court, for Supreme Court Justice Ed Brady out of Fayetteville. Great guy, great job. Was almost like getting a couple LLMs, which is like a legal master's degree, being there, because you're dealing with so much. We did have some charter school cases that came through during that time, and so that was kind of, I guess, my first kind of taste into that. I'd taken education law and done very well. Got the book award for that class, and so I had, I was familiar somewhat with charter schools, but never really actually been involved with them, because like I said, I graduated high school before charter schools were a thing. I was in private practice for a few years, and then I got a call to come up and serve the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Forrest, also another great man, and serve with him first as his general counsel and policy director, then later as his chief of staff and general counsel. And during that whole time, I was on the Charter School Advisory Board, and did a lot of work there. In early 2021, first week of January, I was done at the Lieutenant Governor's office, and I reopened my law firm. A few months later, had a partner come in, so now we're Walker Kiger, PLLC, and I do have charter school clients. I represent some boards that I give them legal advice, and then interestingly, and I know we'll talk a lot about the Charter School Review Board here shortly, but I am now also serving as the legal counsel for the Charter School Review Board, and trying to help them navigate this kind of new world that we're in.
Well, so just going back a little bit before we go to the current and the future. So when you were on CSAB, and again, you were working for the President of the Senate, the Lieutenant Governor. So you were instrumental working on policy and legislation. So I'll start with a brief summary, but I'm pretty sure I think we did the elimination of the cap before, but the structuring of CSAB, the fundamental structural changes that were done that improved it. Can you tell us a little bit about the past legislation that you were involved with that made the industry better then before now?
Yeah, that's a really broad topic because there were so many bills that were in. I think, kind of running through and had my hands in, if either as the lead on it or just working with other people in the industry on it, multiple charter school bills through the legislature. And the goal was always to get regulatory hands off as much as you could to let the charter schools do what they need to do. And I think people don't understand, the people will say charter schools are not accountable. That's ridiculous, right? And they of all of the education systems that we have in North Carolina, charter schools are the most accountable there. I think people don't understand there's a difference between regulation and accountability. Charter schools are less regulated than traditional public schools, and that's on purpose. And so we wanted to try to encourage that, because by removing some of the regulations, some of the red tape, you could open up more innovation in charter schools. They're accountable, of course. When's the last time that you've seen a traditional public school be closed because of poor academic performance? Never, right? It just doesn't happen. But charter schools, if they don't perform financially, if they don't perform academically, if they don't perform correctly with their operations and with their government, then they can be closed. They can have their charter terminated. It's a privilege that a charter school has to be able to operate, as a nonprofit organization that does receive state funds, and to do so, and to be given a little bit of that free rein to be able to innovate and to try new ways of educating children, and for the most part have been very, very successful in doing so.
Well,
so
incubators,
that's really our goal. Yeah,
well, they're supposed to be incubators.
Yeah, right. It's supposed to be innovators. It's we've got hundreds of little education labs across the state to check stuff out, and I think you see a lot of times the things that charter schools are doing that are working well. That translates into other sectors of the public education world.
Well, and therein lies the point. So we touched on earlier that it's the new Charter School Review Board, or CRSB. So I'm going to ask you a multi-point question on this. So if you could tell us a bit how it came to be, how it's structured, what authority does it wield, who sits on the body, how are they selected? If you could just kind of give us soup to nuts on this new body.
Yeah, so charter school advocacy groups like the Charter School Coalition and others work together to try to get the legislature to get this going. And it was basically the idea was to take the Charter School Advisory Board, which would give advice and recommendations to the State Board of Education, who's the decision maker on these things, and kind of shift some of that responsibility to the review board. And so, the whole idea was the state board still is kind of where the buck stops, because there's an appeal, right? There's an appeal from decisions of the Charter School Review Board, but to shift some of those to people that are more in the trenches, right? Everybody that's on the Charter School Review Board, they understand charter schools. They understand very well how they work. They understand things that are going to work, things that are not going to work. And so the idea of the legislature was to let's let some of this decision making be done by the people that are actually in the trenches, that understand it better than anybody else.
So as far as the people that are on it are industry experts, and I would imagine they're from schools and other areas of support for the schools. Now, how are they appointed? Is it state board, or is it legislature, the governor? Who appoints the body?
So you've got some appointed by the Speaker of the House, some by the President Pro Tem of the Senate, You got a couple by the State Board of Education. And in order to give some kind of continuity, the legislature very smartly said that the Charter School Advisory Board would be converted to the Charter School Review Board so that you wouldn't have any kind of turnover and need to appoint all new people. And so really you've got the Charter School Advisory Board now sitting as the Charter School Review Board. So the appointment structure is the same.
So what is the difference between the two? It's the same group of people doing it. What is the fundamental difference between CSAB and CRSB?
So it really comes down to authority, and decision making. Whereas, we would, on the Charter School Advisory Board, we would review applications and then we would make a recommendation to the state board as to whether the school should open or not. Now, decision, then we will, then they can appeal it, right? The school can appeal it, can appeal it to the state board and say, I wouldn't imagine that there's going to be many schools that get approved that decide to appeal to the State Board of Education, but there would be schools that if they're denied and they think they didn't get a fair shake, or they think that they should have been approved for whatever reason, then they can appeal that to the State Board of Education, and they can make those decisions. Also with renewals, the renewals used to be recommendations; they won't be at that point. And also, even though the full scope of the state board's authority includes the power to make rules, that through the rulemaking process, any rules and things like that they adopt would need to come with recommendation from the review board. So it's a delicate kind of balance there, but I think it was very well thought out, and I think it's going to be a net positive, not only for charter schools, but for the state as a whole.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a number of people impacted in the state by charter schools. So as far as your role with the body, what will you be doing with them? What is your role, and how does that all work?
Well, especially as we're kind of navigating through this new process, I think a lot of it's going to be, okay, yes, this is something you have the authority to do, because they're going to have legal questions.
So just to clarify, so your title will be the general counsel for the board?
It will be, I think we'll just call it legal counsel.
Legal counsel.
Legal counsel, and I'm outside legal counsel. Long thing that it would bore the people watching this interview to death to know the kind of process of everything of how it goes to hire outside counsel, and about issues with the Attorney General's office and what they can do and how that all works out. But yeah, I would just be legal counsel to provide them any kind of legal advice that they need, kind of help them navigate those waters. So that'd be my main role.
So in the meetings, for example, or will you be attending all the meetings?
I'll be at most of the meetings. I'm sure there'll be some that I won't be at, and a lot of it's going to depend on what's on the agenda and what we're needing. But I'm going to be there. Be there as much as possible and when needed.
So your expertise, you'll be able to not only assist with how the meeting is structured at points where they'll have questions. It's like, can we do that? You'll be able to advise on that, but also with your knowledge of the application process, the governance process, the financial process. So when they run into issues, they'll be able to ask you for guidance, just basically on any subject, correct?
Yeah, and I'm always happy to give any advice on things like that are outside of the legal realm, just because of the experience that I do have and the things that I've seen. We've got a great Office of Charter Schools. I think this board is really solid, and just such a great swath of experience and people that know what they're doing. And so I'm really excited to see the great things that they're going to be able to do to help the charter school movement.
Well, to your point, the Office of Charter Schools in the last, how many years has it been? I guess probably 7 years now since Dave Machado took over.
Yeah,
I mean,
been about 7, I think.
it is now, and during his tenure, and now with the present director, it is a very professional, organized, structured. It's a far cry from what we had in the past.
I think they did a great job of kind of transforming it into being more, friendly. It wasn't the, no gotchas, sort of like they call them, no gotchas, no trying to do things, but to try to help people if they see issues coming. Hey, you got some issues coming. What can we do to help you with is more of, helping. And a lot of times in government, we don't see that, right? We see it becomes more adversary. And I think Dave did a good job and actually has definitely carried that on, and is just doing such a great job. The office is great. And, and I think the review board is going to be great. I think those two groups working together, we're just going to see great things for charter schools.
Yeah, I mean, it's night and day. When Otho was there, it was also good. But people in the charter world today are very fortunate to have the current Office of Charter Schools and the Charter School Review Board. It's a new world. And if you wouldn't mind, kind of just touch a little bit on some of the positive legislative things that happened this past session that just elevate the charter school industry and kind of regulatory and financing, and just a bit about what happened this last session and how positive it was.
Yeah, I mean, without getting into too much detail, I think the main one is going to be the Charter School Review Board. I think that's going to be it's going to make probably the biggest difference across. There were some things on funding, which was good. I believe we got that there's some May capital in there, as we call it, and we'll see how that works out. A lot of it is, we'll see how how it goes. We've got a very charter friendly legislature, which is a blessing. They understand the need for school choice. I believe last week was School Choice Week.
Yes.
National School Choice Week, and they understand how important school choice is, and charter schools are really at the forefront of that. You've got your traditional public schools, and for most people, that's been the option that they've chosen for their kids. But you've got charter schools, which are a huge area of school choice. You have homeschools, you've got private schools, you've got all those options that are there, and charter schools are really leading the way, especially in the legislature, of trying to increase the amount of school choice that's there. So I think there's some good things that came out of that, and there's still some work to do. And I know those advocacy groups like the coalition, they're doing great things and trying to push those things forward.
Well, and that's part of what Charter School Marketplace is trying to do also, is to bring awareness to the charter school community that there are people in Raleigh on both sides of the aisle. This is a nonpartisan issue. You've got people on both sides of the aisle that understand and support this, that charter schools are not the enemy. It's a small fraction of the entire education landscape, but it's an important one, and one that people that are in the community need to understand, that there are people in Raleigh that get what they are doing and support what they're doing. So it's a good thing for the charter school community to know who these people are and know their faces, know who they are, and know that they support them and their children. So that again is part of what we're trying to do with the Charter School Marketplace. And again, not only for the families, but also the supporting industries. You're an attorney, for example. You are part of this industry. You're a service provider. So you've got other people that provide curriculum, that provide facilities financing, that provide EMO or CMO services even. So they are service providers to this industry, and they need to know more about people like you and what you're doing. And they need to know more about our families and our schools and what good work is being done. And they're part of that industry. We're all part of a family. So, kind of to that end, charter schools in North Carolina, if the data is correct that I'm reading, it's nearly $1 billion industry overall. when you take the funding. You've got about 10,000 employees in North Carolina working in charter schools, and it serves close to 200,000 children. So by any stretch of the imagination, that is a very significant industry in our state. If it were a private industry and not part of the public sector, it would be one of the top industries in the state. So where do you see charter schools going as far as growth? You know, the numbers of charter schools in the state, and just in general, will we ever get over this barrier where people put up a barrier for charter schools and not just accept us to the party, as it were? I mean, so twofold question: where do you see us going, kind of size-wise and as an industry? And then the second question is really, do you think we're ever going to get over this and just be accepted that, you know, we're just part of the team?
Well, let me go back to something you said just a minute ago. Charter school marketplace is a great idea, and one of the things that I like about it is, you know, if you go to a conference, and the conferences are great, but you know, it's kind of a quick, you know, you're going through and there's a booth and you might grab something, you might talk. The marketplace's idea of, you know, having one-on-one meetings so that you can actually see what tailors to the kind of services that the charter school needs, I think is a great idea. In doing so, and making sure that they kind of get plugged in with the right people that they need, because not every service is right for every school, and so giving them the opportunity to do that, I think, is important. But moving on, one of the questions, I think we may grow in students faster than we grow in schools. What I mean by that is, I think there'll be more students coming to the existing schools. I do think that there is going to be growth in the schools as well, but it's not going to be anything like when the cap came off. You know, that was just exponential growth. I don't think that we'll see that, but I do think we'll see a steady increase in the number of students that come. As to the second part of your twofold question there, I don't know if charter schools will ever be welcomed into the kind of the establishment that you see in the public school world, because they're competition, right? I mean, that's really, you know, what it boils down to. I would like to see that happen. We do see some collaboration between charter schools and traditional public schools. I think that's helpful. You know, but the charter schools, they are, you know, kind of the odd person out, if you will, because, you know, you're like, well, you know, you always get that challenge. Well, the charter school was able to do this and get these, you know, and look at the results. It's like, well, you know, well, it's because they're playing on a different set of rules, so they're, you know, they're playing those kind of things, and so there's kind of that animosity that's there. You know, and you hear it too from politicians that just will not accept the fact that charter schools are public schools. They're public, right? They're North Carolina public charter schools, right? They're public. They're not private. They're funded by public schools. There's not, you know, there's this, you know, you talk about dispelling rumors and think, well, charters, they get to pick their students. You know, that's the reason why they're so high, is because they pick their students. It's a random lottery, right? And in the charter school world, it's a random lottery. You don't get to pick your students. Well, they don't have to take EC students. Okay, you know, they don't serve minority students, which is ridiculous. All of these things are ridiculous, and it goes back to people saying, well, they're private schools. Charter schools are not private; they're public, and they serve, you know, every student that comes in, that gets in through the lottery, and the lottery is, you know, it's a random lottery. You've got some weirdness to try to help with, you know, it's random, and they do serve everybody.
Well, and I think that's part of what we need to work on as an industry also, is some positive messaging, and so people know these things. I mean, I remember when they tried to put a program in Guilford County called Say Yes years ago, which has turned out to really not be what it was supposed to be. And so I was meeting with the principal of a large Christian school to talk about it. And he said, well, you mean you can't kick kids out? It's like, no. You mean you can't choose who comes? It's like, no. But all the myths. I mean, and this is an intelligent guy that runs a nice sized good school, and literally the only information he thought he had about charter schools was all the rhetoric that you're saying, which are completely untrue. So I think that's part of what we need to do also in the marketplace, as it were, is to just get some positive messaging out that we're doing good things and try to break down some of those walls and get rid of some of that animosity. And, maybe over time we can, be like Jefferson and Adams, at least have mutual respect.
That's a very good one. That's a very good one.
So conflicting views, but at the end of the day, they had a bond.
They did.
So is there anything that you'd like to say in conclusion? Because I think we're just about to wrap here.
Yeah, I just, looking down the road, 5 to 10 years, I see charter schools being an even bigger part of education. I think we'll have more schools. I do also think we'll have a lot more students. And I just, I'm there to support charter schools, do what's best, serve my client in the best way that I can, and, try to see just, what it's all about. It's about students getting a good education so they can be productive members of society. That's what it's all about. And I think that's what we have to look through everything we do. We look through it with that lens.
Well, and you used the A word earlier. The schools are accountable. And if they're not doing those things, if they're not providing that service, they're not going to be around.
That's right.
So the marketplace is, I've quoted this before, the new president of Argentina, Milei, said that the marketplace never fails. It only fails when people interfere with it. So let the parents make the choice and it will succeed. So really, really, really appreciate your time and your service to the state and to the schools and the children and the industry. Thank you very much, Stephen Walker.
Thank you. It's good talking to you, Paul.
Good talking to you. Take care.